Well, hi there. Welcome to the very first episode of the Edtech show. Really excited to welcome you to this. If you're watching back after the live event, then please do reach out if you want to ask any questions. I'm really excited to be engaging in this project with some not only great friends, but people that I massively respect in terms of their work in the education space. First up, joining me as a regular host on the Edtech show is my partner, not that sort of partner, in global edtech, Ronan Nicholl. Ronan is an educator I've known for many years with a great history of working in schools around the world. Currently leading on digital, among others, at Berkhamsted School. And I'm really pleased to be working on this project with him. Alongside Ronan, we've got Olly Lewis. Olly Lewis is a senior leader from a school in Abu Dhabi. He's an MIE expert, as is Ronan, to be fair, who is also an Apple Distinguished Educator. Olly is someone I've worked with over many years in different guises, and someone who I really respect, again, in the education space. And he'll be bringing lots of global perspectives to the show as we move our way forwards. And last but by no means least, someone who doesn't really need any introduction. I'm really pleased to be working again with Bukky Yusuf. Someone I've worked with in a variety of roles, from advisory boards to all sorts of roles, more recently on the UK Edu Stories project that we were running during the pandemic. Not that the pandemic has gone or anything, obviously, but working together with Bukky, someone who's got a massive interest and passion for EdTech, education, children with additional learning needs, raising the profile of women in education, supporting BAME educators. She's on the, and I always get this wrong, but I think it's the EdTech Strategy Group with the Department for Education, co-chair alongside Caroline Wright, Director General at BISA. We have got a pretty good lineup of people to host a show on a regular basis. So each and every show will take place once a month on Thursday evenings, just like it is right now. The third Thursday of every month is we're going to aim to do that at 7 p.m. But obviously, you can watch it back. It will be available on LinkedIn if you're watching there, and hi if you're on LinkedIn. Hello if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're on Twitter, that's coming out of my ICT Evangelist account. So there's three sort of reports going to take place each and every show. We're very keen to share global perspectives and all these sorts of things around EdTech. We're looking to take on board the views of educators from around the world, and you'll hear that definitely later on in both Olly and Bukky's segments. Just before we get going with the first segment, which is when we're going to talk a bit about the EdTech show and get some perspectives from my co-hosts and some others from around the world. Bukky, did you want to take a moment to just introduce your segment on the show this evening?
Yes, hi, Mark. And hi, everyone. Yes, so my section is actually going to be reviewing remote education. We've undertaken it for about 18 months approximately, and it'd just be good just to reflect on what great practice there has been on a global basis, and also thinking about moving forward with regards to blended learning and the type of things that schools and colleges should be considering when they actually think about EdTech solutions that they take up in the future.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Bukky. And your section this evening, Olly, what are you exploring this evening?
Hi, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. My segment is from a UAE perspective. The Middle East is really well known, along with the other countries in the GCC, for their innovative projects and drive for EdTech, not just recently in the pandemic, but it's been something that's been building for over 10 years now. So I speak to a plethora of educators, from teachers to senior leaders across the region, to hear their perspectives on the conditions that have meant the GCC region has been so innovative with educational technology.
Brilliant stuff. Now, we said 3 segments per show. Normally, there'll be 3 of us per show, but given it's our first show, Ronan's on joining us. While I've got you, Ronan, what are you looking forward to? And have you got anything to add about the things we're going to be discussing and various parts to the format on the EdTech show?
Yeah, I think just the fact that we're kind of bringing voices together is really, for me, what it's all about. It's about having a conversation. Obviously, in the last few years, we've seen a massive adoption of EdTech across the world. And so many educators and schools have really struggled with knowing how to adopt the technology. So I think what's really important is community. And that's really what this show is about for me. It's about bringing voices together and also looking at what EdTech actually works in the classroom to have an impact on learning and teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you, Ronan. So fantastic. Really looking forward to that. We've got more obviously lined up and planned for the show next month, but we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later on during the show. Between each of the segments as well, each of us have got a little bit of current EdTech news to share with you. I've got a bit of a special message from Mike Tholson, one of the product managers at Microsoft as well. So we'll be talking about all these sort of things throughout the course of the show. But for now, why don't we get started with the very first little report? And I thought for the first segment on the show, it'd be really nice to sort of share and get some perspectives on why the EdTech show is an important thing to be doing right now and what we're hoping to achieve with the activity as well. So here's that first segment, and I hope you enjoy this little report. There are so many opportunities available to us through teaching and learning with technology. It seems the time is right for something a little bit more detailed, a little bit more in-depth. And the EdTech show provides us that opportunity to do that.
I'm really excited about the new format for the Global EdTech show. I think there's a real window and an opportunity to look at what really resonates well with everybody involved in education, irrespective of your stakeholder hat. So I think the content of really bringing in some key messaging, some ideas and innovation, and breaking that down into segments, which means that there's always going to be something for everyone in every show, really, really resonates with me. I think it really builds on that concept that rather than a show having a particular focus, having those different topics and different case studies to share every episode, it's going to be a real positive.
I think it's a great idea. You know, we see like these kind of, I don't know, the one show and so on, you know, just kind of a quick summary where somebody can go and just pick up ideas, listen to credible people, you know, develop their own thoughts, find out things that they didn't necessarily know about, and it's all in one place. And the fact that, again, they can access that whenever they want to is actually quite key.
I think it's a great opportunity just to think about, okay, we've all experienced EdTech in various different ways. We've all undertaken remote and distance learning in various ways. But the question is now, what next? How are we cementing those practices, particularly as we move with regards to blended learning? And what makes it even more unique is, how is that taking place across the world? So having those global discussions, I think, are really exciting and is something that's quite different. So you would have discussions again from educators around the world, also from the industry. So the EdTech and tech industry representatives will be discussing some of the most innovative ideas and things like that would enable us to keep learning. So I think you'll obviously have snippets from educators talking about their best practices, what they're trying out, what what may not be working so well. But I just think that some of the aspects will be cutting edge, and it's always exciting to think about pushing the envelope and looking as to then what can happen next and where we can actually engage our learners in different ways.
For me, the part where I observed it really shifted was at the onset of the pandemic. And so, like, my own personal story is back in March of 2020, you know, I did a lot of things on Twitter. I had never really used YouTube. I'd never published a video. I definitely had not used TikTok. And what happened at the pandemic, though, is all of these educators globally were all of a sudden asked to learn about and use these online platforms and tools that they had never used. And there was a huge crushing desire for information, like, how do I do these things? And for me, what happened was I was on Twitter and I sort of made this short little video because a lot of people kept saying, hey, how can I do screen recording? So I made like a 1 or 2 minute video on how to use the built-in PowerPoint screen recorder. And this was right as everything was closing in March of 2020. And that video kind of went viral. It got, I don't know, 60 or 70,000 views within a day. And so I had this little moment of, I thought, oh, wow, like maybe this type of information is one of the more valuable things during this pandemic, because historically it might be an educator took a day of CPD or professional development or a half-day training in person. And during the pandemic, people clearly didn't have that sort of time. They're like, I need to learn how to do this right now, and I don't have 5 hours. And so I started having the idea of, well, maybe if I made it this YouTube channel. And I didn't even know what a YouTube channel was at the time. I knew what YouTube was. I didn't know what a channel was. So I started experimenting, making these really short form content. I just called them quick tip videos. It's like not an hour-long video. Here's a 2-minute video or a 3-minute video on how to use a Teams feature, or how to use this thing in OneNote, or how to record your screen with PowerPoint. And I started putting them out just to help educators out at scale. And it started getting popular. To the flip side of that, then another experiment I started doing later in the year was on TikTok. And again, I would have laughed at myself saying like, oh, you're gonna make TikTok videos. But same thing, was like, well, TikTok seems to specialize in these 1-minute videos. Maybe I'll experiment and put some little short how-to videos on TikTok. And there's no dancing. Don't worry, Mark, I'm not dancing in these videos. It's just a screen recording in vertical mode of these really short and sweet snippets on how to do something in Outlook or Excel or Teams or PowerPoint. And those got really popular. Like, shocking to me, TikTok, the videos there got more popular than on YouTube. So yeah, it was kind of a fumbling around, but the hunger for information, and really, I call it micro learning. I mean, I didn't invent that term, but it's like micro learning. Hey, I got 30 seconds or a minute and I want to get some value, like, go. So that's my own story on that.
It's been really, really obvious and clear for many that the EdTech community, in my eyes, have really stepped up. First and foremost, it was the availability and accessibility of solutions that might help mitigate some of the immediate challenges that schools were facing. But I think it's also brought together the community in terms of greater narrative and discussion. Those kind of key buzzwords that I always like to talk about, that co-production, of not trying to foist solutions on schools when they're already under pressure and busy, but looking at the right tools that are appropriate and innovative that will actually address an immediate need. And so we've seen a huge raft of schools being supported by EdTech vendors, whether it's in the remote learning field or whether it's about access to online content, personalized learning. I mean, the list goes on. And I think it's been a real stamp of showing the strength of the EdTech community, and also the need moving forward that those personal relationships, those links between schools and vendors directly, continue to be fostered and grown for the benefit of all. As a vendor, Net Support, we had to recognize there were lots of challenges, and part of the process is to be reflective. So the first and easy bit, I guess, was to look at the technology that we knew would be beneficial given the current pressures on schools, and make that available free to them so that there was at least some solutions on the table, alongside many other vendors, I might add. I think the second part was recognizing that the landscape had changed. And so rather than trying to fit a square into a round hole, there was also a need for us to quickly prioritize visions to our development pathways and actually look at what was going to be the best solution to support schools, not just now, but looking longer term. And so with that in mind, we took a decision to completely redesign and develop a new solution, Classroom Cloud, which was very much focused and is focused around removing the physical from the conversation. Classroom instruction, safeguarding, collaboration, irrespective of the dynamic. And that was really important to us, because what we've seen is that one of the biggest pressures is time and confidence on staff to adapt and utilize new solutions. So having the luxury of a single solution that can be used irrespective of the setting really mitigates some of that and gives schools an easier option in terms of having that seamless learning experience wherever.
The focus and the idea of launching the EdTech show is to provide teachers and anyone who has an interest in EdTech to be able to come together to learn about exciting new products that are transforming what is happening, and also to bring together experts in the field to provide thought leadership, to share and discuss, debate topical issues that are having an impact on what is happening in education.
I agreed to be a host on the EdTech show, not only because I get to work with some amazing people in an amazing space, but also it's an opportunity for all of us to shine a light on education technology, teaching and learning, and the fantastic things that have happened across the globe, whether that be locally in a classroom, globally in terms of wider system scale across countries, or even products, resources, tools that people might not necessarily have heard about, or that we can delve a little bit deeper into off the back of experience, talking and collaborating with some of the guests that we'll have on the show. I think the thing I'm looking forward to most about the Edtech show is being a part of a show that is completely different. I think in the last 2 years, the number of shows that have popped up, and Mark, you and I are a host of one of those shows, possibly pioneers of shows like that, is they've all become a little bit samey. And I'm looking forward to being a part of a show that is completely different, that has a completely different vibe, has a completely different take on educational technology, and being at the forefront of that, being able to connect, collaborate and share to a massive audience. The reason I do all these extra things like Global Edtech, writing for them, the Edtech show, Learn Live UAE, is because it helps me not only develop my own knowledge, but tap into a resource across the entire globe, which is colleagues, staff. And the more that I can learn, the more that I can pass on to my own colleagues in my own school, and that filters down then to hopefully improve outcomes for students in my classroom and my colleagues' classroom. So it's simple. The more that I can learn and the more information I can assimilate from people, from their experiences, from their contexts, hopefully that can have improved outcomes for my students in my classroom.
I think certainly from when I was, when I first started teaching 4 years ago, professional development meant that you left your classroom, went into another space, and somebody would stand at the front and they would impart information. And occasionally there would be workshops and so on as well. That has changed significantly. Technology has got a huge role to play within that. Everything from social media, everything from that ease of access, right? So teachers kind of just want to find things out. They might just want to watch something. They might passively want to listen to something, and so on. It does, and they can do that when it suits them. And that's really quite key. Teachers are busy people. They've got 100 things going on all at the same time. It's not always possible to kind of have time as a commodity to be kind of spent on CPD all the time. We know it's very useful, we know it's impactful, but the way in which you can continue professional development is now significantly different. It's a lot more personalized, a lot more richer. You can see tutorials and examples of things that you could go and practice tomorrow. It is very, very different. I think audio visual approach that we see in the form of podcasts, in the form of live streams, in the form of YouTube videos, on things that might pop up on Twitter, is actually quite important for educators all over the world.
Connecting with educators. I, as a teacher at heart, I love hearing what different people are actually doing, and it gives us an opportunity to learn as well. So I'm excited to hear about what the educators from around the world are doing, how they're particularly making blended learning work. Blended learning is quite a challenge. It's a novel way of teaching and learning, and I'm interested to actually learn how it works, particularly for young people that have additional learning needs.
I'm really excited about the EdTech narrative right now. I think there's a huge opportunity right now for us to embrace and embed the effective use of EdTech. But there is a collaboration and an effort around that which we need to support and embrace. So much like the EdTech show, as a vendor and personally, I'm heavily invested in EdTech, and I want to make sure we continue to do both online events. We've launched a new magazine. We'll be supporting EdTech startups at VET and other events. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to both celebrate our success and share our failures for the benefit of all.
The Edtech show came about from an idea of trying to do something a little bit different when it came to sharing through the sites like YouTube and LinkedIn Live. The Edtech show will take place monthly, third Thursday of every month from 7 p.m, available on LinkedIn Live, YouTube and Twitter. Please share with your colleagues far and wide, and we really hope that you can join us for this inspiring and educational journey into the world of EdTech.
You're muted, Bukky.
Thank you, Olly. Right, take two. So how exciting to see different perspectives shared from educators across the EdTech community, and the excitement, looking to the future with optimism, and as we actually take the learning from the lockdown period forward. But with that, I'll hand over to Olly now, who's going to be sharing some updates within the EdTech news.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my bit of news this month revolves around the art of storytelling, which is as old as humanity, and it's something that binds us. It's something that enables us to share knowledge with our communities, as well as educating youngsters. Now, if you've worked in an Apple school recently or the past few years, you've had the benefit of a really creative and adaptive tool called Apple Clips, which is fantastic for students to be able to share their learning, understanding, and stories. But recently, Microsoft have purchased Clipchamp. Now that Clipchamp is a part of Microsoft, that enables all Microsoft schools and all Microsoft users to share their stories and their learning and use their awesome piece of video software, which is super intuitive and really easy to use. So I'm really excited to see what the Microsoft Edu community, Showcase schools, and just all Microsoft schools and learners can create using Clipchamp. So that's my bit of news for the month.
Thank you, Olly. So I'm going to now share my video clip. I had the opportunity to talk to some educators across the globe, as well as someone from the EdTech industry, who are going to be sharing some of their insights with regards to remote and distance learning, what they learned, best practices, and how they actually take blended learning forward. The first episode of the EdTech show took the opportunity to capture some of the remote education and blended learning practices that have taken place around the world.
We were able to address the accessibility and learner variability in classrooms by making multimodal plans, and we could make learning a combination of synchronous and asynchronous classroom. We could put learning together as a centralized place for putting the resources, learning resources together, which was accessible for the students, otherwise which wouldn't have been possible in a physical classroom. This was also a platform where we could replicate group work by introducing the concept of breakout rooms where students could virtually talk to each other related to the concept that is being taught, come up with the solution to the problem, and exactly replicate, how they used to do it in the physical classroom.
So for us, it was Google Classroom, and then everything was posted through Google Classroom, be it assignments or even links to third-party platforms. Everything was posted through Google Classroom. So it made us quickly realize that things needed to be simple for the end user, and that includes teachers and students. And now we're back into the classroom. It's something that we've continued to do. We've really assessed and looked at all the tools that we had access to, and we have actually cut a few, thinking that we never really used them to their full extent. So it gave us an opportunity to reflect on usage and how technology supported teaching and learning before COVID, during COVID, and then moving forward, then how we can change things.
We at our school are using Teams platform, Microsoft Teams platform. The learning that happened using that platform, the lessons were recorded. Many students who could not catch up during that lesson time or could not be a part of the lesson because of XYZ reasons, maybe they are not well, maybe they couldn't understand when the class was going on, they could revisit the recording to to understand the concepts better. Then there was also some accessibility tools, beautiful accessibility tools integrated within Microsoft Teams, like Immersive Reader. The learners who struggle with reading could read because of Immersive Reader. The students who face problems with writing could use the dictation tool to dictate and make learning accessible to them. So we could make that arrangement of, increasing their time even in Teams when we are getting their assignments submitted. A feature like Immersive Reader was also available in MS Forms, which could, help students read questions. The students who faced challenges in reading and comprehending questions, reading was easier, as reading could be done by the AI in MS Forms when the questions were being made. So it was easy for them to comprehend the same. And also the multimodality feature, where you could include, audio, video, and various other tools to suit the need.
I think with blended learning, it's something that's been around, or the term has been around for over a decade now. But I think we can actually see it in action, and we definitely saw it in action during remote learning. So it added even more importance to it and value. So we could actually look at what we're doing in the classroom. And one thing for us that was so important was to actually value that face-to-face time. So we weren't having students come into a classroom and watching a video, or come into a classroom and just sit down there and read, where we've almost flipped it. And you're getting a combination then, obviously blended, and a combination of both then. So we could actually make the most of being in person. So that's something that we've definitely tried to do. And we've not limit is the wrong word, but we've tried to reduce the actual use of devices in the classroom. So there's a lot more collaboration going on outside of the devices to begin with. And then we look at how the technology then can actually bring it together. For us, it was a massive learning opportunity, wasn't it? And a massive reflection on, we as a school, we were over-resourced. Being a new school, everything was new, and we got access to loads of apps and platforms, and a lot of those we've actually got rid of, because we thought, we're not actually using that. And it wasn't a financial thing. It was because we're not benefiting from it. It's not adding value.
Mm-hmm. I then asked Gunjan and Tim where they gained inspiration for some of the blended learning practices that take place within their classrooms and across their school settings.
We do have a system of sharing good practices and sharing good tech practices. So whatever, is a hit in our classroom, we do share it with other teachers. We do have various other training platforms accessible to us, which we keep getting, like Microsoft training platforms, Google training platforms, and various other tools and techniques, training platforms like Wakelet, Flipgrid, and all. So we do upgrade ourselves, because that's the need of and that's how our students learn. So to be able to keep pace with their learning, we need to imbibe ways in which they learn.
For me, inspiration starts off within our actual school. I really try and meet as many people informally, formally, from different departments, from different subjects, and actually just see what they're doing. And I think we must be the most tech savvy cohort of educators that's ever been. So it's great to actually get the opportunity now to see how teachers learn from the COVID experience and the remote learning, and seeing what they're actually doing. So I'm taking loads of inspiration from just my colleagues here. And then for me, a popular way to actually go and learn and develop professionally is Twitter. So there's a lot of people sharing on there, and it was almost like the whole community, whenever there's the diversity of sharing, we've all gone and looked to see what people are sharing, and at the same time we're sharing as well.
Al Kingsley provided some insights for EdTech companies and their priorities following on from the pandemic.
I think the topic of young children with additional learning needs has really risen and is a hot topic right now for vendors to think about, but also to think about how we deliver remote learning and beyond and make sure that it's accessible for all. I think we started the narrative 18 months ago talking in the broader sense about equality of access. And that, of course, goes way beyond connectivity to the usability and the suitability of the software that we put in place. So I think what we've seen is a move to looking for solutions that are more inclusive. And that can be something as simple as when we're looking at assessment software from early years right the way through the primary phase, where technology used for capturing assessments has the additional ability to flex with what would have been P-scales and now the new aspects of engagement, for example, making sure that that single solution can capture the learning journey of a child, ideally align with details and information from their EHCP plans. But then also what we've seen as part of that remote learning delivery has been the strength and value of the consistency in terms of the familiarity of a teacher's face for communication with a child, but also utilizing that underlying technology to support and develop the school to home communication, which is so critical for our children with additional needs. So I think we'll have to look at it as a holistic approach. And what I often look at and see now is the different elements being brought together, and where possible, where we have less solutions and that kind of core functionality available within a single solution or interconnected between solutions, it's much more effective. It saves time for the teachers and ensures that we're delivering what our learners actually need. So lots of lessons to learn. And I suppose probably the most important one I always say is less is more. The most complex, the most powerful solutions aren't necessarily the most appropriate. And where we can, it's really important that the tools we pick can be used by the entire cohort of our class, not just a subset.
And he outlined some of the lessons learned that schools and colleges now undertake when it comes to selecting their EdTech solutions.
We've had a real change in the way that schools and colleges select EdTech solutions. I suppose with greater choice as a result of that kind of amplification of the EdTech narrative over the last 18 months, with greater choice comes greater complexity. We've encouraged schools to be, in some cases, take risks and be bolder in terms of trying new technology and solutions. But what we also need to be reflective of is the time taken to evaluate, trial and implement the solution covers both a cost, but that key time impact on staff within a school. So now we've seen the narrative has really moved to one about evidence-informed and evidence-backed solutions. So I think there's a change, and actually in a positive way, a greater power and responsibility for educators to be able to challenge vendors, not only to what does your product do in line with the website or the shiny brochure, but also to provide that supporting evidence, whether it's research-based, if the solution's pedagogy aligned, whether it's case studies from other schools and organizations, but really drilling down on the evidence of impact that the solution purports to offer. Alongside that, I think there's also an expectation now of the ability to trial software extensively within a school before making a purchasing commitment. Schools are recognizing with a really rapidly changing technology landscape, they want solutions that are, where possible, device agnostic, which doesn't limit their future digital plans. Making sure that the data that's stored within them is safe and secure and aligned with a typical data protection impact assessment. So that follows through as well. And one thing we've also seen really expand and develop in a hugely positive way is the strength and value of the education PLNs, whether we're looking at Twitter or on Instagram, wherever it may be. So now more than ever, there's always that opportunity to reflect with peers and find out more about solutions before you commit time and effort to using them. That's a two-way street, of course, because the onus is now on vendors to actually ensure that that information is available upfront, clear and center. And of course, if they want to shorten that journey and make sure they can deliver on it, then it comes back to that core point. Co-produce solutions in the first place, and you've got a much better chance that the technology you're offering will be fit for purpose and deliver on the promises it offers.
Wow, thank you so much, Bukky, for that fantastic report. I mean, I learned so much. It's great to get that sort of global insights there from around the world alongside everything else. So this is my segment in the show where I sort of share my news, as it were. It's not my news, but I was really fortunate to get a chance to chat with Mike Tholfsen, as you saw in my segment at the top of the show. And like Mike, accessibility is something that I'm hugely passionate about as well. And in my conversation with him, I asked him, you know, what is new with Microsoft? What are the things you're looking at and exploring at the moment? And he shared some of the updates that have happened quite recently, one of which I'm really, really excited about. I'm yet to have a go with it, but he'll explain how you can access it, and it's 100% live for schools around the world. If you want to find out more about the things he's going to share, as he will say, please do check out his YouTube channel where you can find out more. But here's a little update from Microsoft from Mike Tholfsen.
Yeah, so first with reading progress, that's one that I work on personally, so I'm very passionate about. And reading progress is all about practicing reading fluency and giving educators insights to that. And it's built into Microsoft Teams. It's free. It works on any device for students, so desktop, PC, Mac, iOS, Android. And it lets the educator assign a reading passage for practicing reading. And then the student gets that reading passage in a Teams assignment. They open it up. They read out loud and record themselves, both audio and video, and they can do it independently. They can do it at home. They can do it at school. And they submit their recording. And then we run AI to analyze the voice and the words that were being read. And we let the teacher automatically see things like mispronounced words, omitted words, insertions, repetitions, etc. And this teacher can watch and listen and change that if they want. They don't have to use the AI. They can go into sort of a manual mode if they want, just like with a paper, like they would do with paper. And then lastly, it has insights and analytics. And so we capture all that data. We produce really nice and easy to read charts and analytics for teachers to drill in at a student level or at a class level. Even schools can get it at a school-wide level. So that's probably the one that's most exciting. Reading progress is fully rolled out. We have some other big updates as well. So one of the things we have in Microsoft Teams, we've rolled out some big improvements to assignments. So you can do things like group project work. So now you can have group assignments in Microsoft Teams. And that's been one of the top requests. Related is you can now have all of a calendar for all your assignments in Teams as well. Those are two of the biggest requests that we've had for Teams. And then the other one is because there's still a lot of remote meetings happening and hybrid work and remote and classrooms, there's been some big updates for meetings. So we're in a meeting here. We've rolled out things like dynamic view and presenter view. So that means you can do things like have your screen overlay on the content. We call that reporter mode. You can do side by side where there's content and then there's you. You can do things like pin different people. We call that spotlight mode. So for example, an inclusive scenario in meetings would be, let's say I've got someone doing sign language and then I have a presenter. So there's two people, sign language and presenter. With dynamic view and spotlight, I can pin multiple people in the upper right. So I could have the sign language person, and then I could have the person presenting below them, the content on the main screen. And so you have a lot of custom configurations. And also just at the end of this, put a pitch for my YouTube channel, which would say, if you want to see deep dive demos into how these things work and all the new updates for Teams and reading progress and ED features, check out my YouTube channel. It's the same as my full name. It's just Mike Tholfsen on YouTube. But I go into in depth to show like how these things work and how they operate.
Fantastic. Well, look, really, really excited about all these updates from Microsoft. And I have to say, during the last 18 months, the ways in which they and other companies such as Google and Apple and others have innovated during this time has been a real hallmark of how important education is and their recognition of that as well. So thanks to Mike for giving his time to not only come in on the report, but also share some of the updates and some of the things that are new and fresh for educators from Microsoft at the moment. Now I'm just going to bring Olly back in. Welcome back, Olly. Your report, remind us, what's your report about?
So my report shines a spotlight on the Middle East and draws opinions and experience from a plethora of educators as to why the Middle East has been such a, I think hotbed is probably the best descriptor for it over the years in terms of use of educational technology to drive teaching and learning, and just innovation projects throughout schools, no matter the phase or stage you look at. So I've sought out a whole host of different educators. I was spoilt for choice with, you know, who I could go with. I probably could have filled the whole show with various different people. But let's hand over straight to the video and hear their experience and opinions, please. This week on my segment on the Edtech show, I talk to educators from across the UAE on why the Middle East is so well known for innovation in Edtech.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this after you sort of messaged the other day, and when I came about 10, 11 years ago, the size of Dubai as an education system was a lot smaller. We were one of about half the schools that there are now, and lots of those were British as well. So even the whole system has become more international over the years. But it was founded on some really quite traditional British values, and the mindset of parents was quite traditional. And I think even from the word go, there was an appetite for innovation even back then, and an appetite to change things and to move forward and to come with the times. And there was the advent of mobile tech learning and all the rest of it. But it was the first challenge was convincing teachers who'd been here for a long time and parents who were in a very traditional mindset that maybe there was something that could be added to the teaching and learning by bringing tech in. And the key back then, as it is now, was making sure that it wasn't gimmicky. Sort of went with iPads from early on, and Steve Bambury and I ended up setting up a website called iPad Educators about 10 years ago, which the idea was that we would just review apps. So these are the apps that you can use in your classroom, and quickly it went to 40,000 followers because there were people who wanted to use this in education. They could see that it was simplifying things. They could see that it was amalgamating your calculators, your phones, all the rest of it, all the things that it did, and in a really easy way. And around that time, the education market changed. The size, the number of schools sort of was increasing year on year. There was a push from the KHDA. At that time, there were more bottoms than there were seats, and the KHDA wanted to get more seats than there were bottoms to allow people to have choice within the education sector. And so they were trying to make it as attractive as possible for schools to be able to open, and inspecting them to make sure that they were sort of high quality or whatever. So as they were doing that, there was also a community starting to form, sharing ideas around technology and the impact that could sort of have. And so schools were opening and beginning to open with a mindset that technology was important, and it was starting to come right from the beginning of them opening, which sort of created then a community where champions within schools were able to connect through things like guests, and through the introduction of BET and those sort of things. But because Dubai has as a parent body and a school body has a high purchasing power compared to places in sort of the UK maybe, because of that high level of purchasing power, you couple that with the country's drive for innovation, you couple that with the expanding education sector, you couple that with a forming community of like-minded EdTech people. And it really sort of exploded, and it's been great. It's been a great journey to be part of over the last few years, and to see it's been one of the key areas, I think, in which schools have not competed with each other but collaborated with each other.
Qatar, for example, has established lots of committees for innovation or technological innovation, and one of them is about artificial intelligence. And also UAE had lots of innovation hubs, STEM, lots of programs either from K to 12 or for higher education. Jordan the same, but it's still, are we sharing in a way what's happening? Are we sharing the results or disseminating the findings that we also have from any research, any program, or any initiative that had been launched?
I think it's very much to do with the fact that we're an expat community, and expat communities, like as soon as someone comes in, like you want to make them feel welcome, you want to learn from them. Like you want to learn about where they come from, you want to learn about kind of like how they teach and like why it's different from your teaching. And that instantly, like, you know, and very kind of intuitively now has gone into like, well, how do you use EdTech in your different schools? Like, why is that different to how we use it? And like, you know, that conversation is now a lot easier to kind of like have in our in kind of like UAE schools, because I guess the schools are used to change, and that's a good thing when it comes to EdTech. Like the schools are more open-minded and welcome to change, so it becomes a bit of a sandbox in a way. Yes, you need direction, but also like being open-minded is really important for that.
I believe the UAE is very well known for innovation and EdTech for many reasons. I think being a new country in comparison to other countries, and the advancements that have taken place over the last 50 years and how quickly that's developed, it's been in a position, the country, that has been able to have a clear strategy, the innovation strategy to develop an education, but not just in education, across every single sector, across the whole of the UAE, which is incredibly exciting. But they definitely pinpointed education as being one of those elements that they want to ensure innovation has taken place. So when it comes to private schools and the fee structures and what's expected and the competitive nature of the schools as well, there is, I'd say, a natural pressure to ensure that we are keeping up to date with 21st century learning, to be in line with that innovation strategy, but also to give and provide the best to parents that we possibly can do.
I think as part of the culture of the UAE and Dubai and you know, Abu Dhabi, is they've always kind of broken down barriers and been very kind of forward thinking and innovative, and also very rapid in terms of growth. And the only way they've been able to grow so quickly is because of technology driven, you know, building the biggest buildings in the world. And when you're in that kind of environment, I think it's like a snowball effect. It inspires other people to get involved and to push themselves, you know, particularly, you know, you think 50 years ago, that entrepreneurial people coming to Dubai and setting up businesses and establishing themselves here. It's that kind of, yeah, it's a snowball effect. And so you feed off that, and schools and education companies and tech companies feed off that as well. And so I think the main factor is that, yeah, that kind of snowball momentum that a place gets that really drives something forward. And
I personally think that it is very well known for it, purely because of the fact that there's a lot of collaboration. When I worked in the UK, felt like it was very much kind of one school, you do what you do and you don't really share it. And I know that has changed a lot in the last 5 or 6 years. However, coming into the UAE, that was the biggest part of it for me. It was all about sharing, collaboration. We're in this together. And that even was before the pandemic. It's just continually growing and developing from each other. What's worked well, sharing content, sharing anything that we've got that's just been able to really improve and impact on our students' lives. And I just think that kind of, you know, no matter what, you know, device, the agnostic, all the way, that actually people are really able to just share and collaborate on the fact that we just want students to be able to learn and have a really great time doing it. So I think that just breeds innovation.
One of the reasons I think the UAE is well known for innovation and EdTech is that it's quite a competitive landscape in terms of business, in terms of education, and in terms of industry. It's a country that is aspirational in terms of attracting the best brands, whether that's school or whether that is business, or whether sometimes it can be a combination of both. So I think what you have here is a high number of really high performing schools that are well resourced and well financed as well. And you have a competitive environment where schools are indirectly challenging each other to achieve more. Sometimes they're collaborating together to work on projects, and with that comes investment. And innovation and use of technology, in my opinion, is one place where a school can really make itself stand out, because naturally it's attractive to parents, it's exciting to students. So where schools have got a program that's innovative, whether it be the whole way the school is run, whether it be a project that's happening within the school, or whether it's just access to materials and resources that students have every day, those become USPs for schools. So I think it's somewhere that schools and school leaders and school owners have seen as an area that's of interest to parents and students, and it's of benefit to society as well. And as we look at what skills young people might need for the future, it becomes more incumbent on schools to teach and develop those skills, and one of those is use of technology.
With, I think there's definitely much more of an openness and willingness to understand technology, and the links between education technology and teaching and learning are definitely becoming much stronger. So it's no longer that something is a tool or something that can be there or not there. Actually, it's things that are now really showing that they can become something very useful, that can, reduce workload, but actually can really show progress within students' work and abilities and attainment across schools. So I think just those kind of things that EdTech people like us have been pushing for a long time actually are now coming to the forefront, and people going, oh, okay, now I understand what it's for. And so I think that kind of connection between teaching and learning and actually the tool itself is becoming a lot more prevalent.
Now, this is a very interesting question, because at the same time that many countries in the Middle East and North Africa region, there are lots of countries that they suffer from crisis and conflict zones. But on the other hand, there are many countries that they are trying to help their nations and other neighbor countries to improve their conditions. And technologies are one of the most important tools. In addition, they want also to get in cope with developed countries and what they are offering for the people, especially within education. We see United Arab Emirates, we see many countries within the region that they're establishing technologies hub and technologies companies, different initiatives to start and to introduce those advanced technologies to their people.
When the pandemic hit, we knew very early on that we were going to have a full term of 100% distant learning. And I do think by the KHDA and Dubai setting the inspections that we had, the distance learning evaluations, which happened quite early on, it did support us in a way of ensuring that we were making sure that the provision that we had for our students was to the best quality. And to do that, we needed to use EdTech correctly. And we had our systems in place. The advancements of teachers' pedagogy of using it to improve learning experiences vastly improved, and that was through CPD that we created, and sharing best practice of how you can make learning as relevant and engaging and inspiring for the kids as we could do.
I think now we're heading towards a situation where we have a little bit of a less is more approach, at least in the short term. And we've been on a period of, I guess, exponential growth in terms of technology in schools that really peaked during distance learning and during remote learning, where schools were rolling out programs thick and fast. They were trying free samples of products and programs, and I think now it's given people impetus and confidence to step back from it a little bit and look at use of technology and look at use of devices and think, is the benefit to this clear and obvious? Does the expense and the setup justify the outcomes? If not, then maybe let's scale it back a little bit, or let's take some time to review before we add all these things back in.
Your big ones. And I mean, obviously the UAE, even the act of allowing things like Zoom and conference calling, 4 years ago, that wasn't there. So that's really helps drive that, because all of a sudden it's opened up communication across, the technology landscape.
And actually seeing the difference that teaching and learning can have when you add a device into the classroom. And that's not that it's used every second of every day, but actually that it's there then to be able to enhance the learning that's happening. The extension on terms of things like gifted and talented or the more able students was incredible. The fact that they would then be able to go off and extend their own learning. One of the biggest things in the digital learning walk that we did that we found was that a lot more subjects, and subjects that you potentially wouldn't expect, were actually really able to delve into things like research and the history of their subject, and that students were getting really excited about it. So I think things like that are really nice pockets of the way that technology can really innovate and stretch what's happening in education.
In order to implement technology, you need lots of time to trial it, make errors and things. And I don't necessarily think that, particularly in education, you've not always got that time to take risks. You've got to, everything's fast paced, you've got to get the results. And so people quite easily fall into kind of what we've always done. We always get, we get good results. So we'll just keep kind of plodding along and getting what we have always got. And because it's time consuming, you have to take risks, you have to fail with technology as much as you can then succeed with it. So I think during the pandemic, because people were forced to give time to technology, has really allowed people to invest some time to upskill themselves and familiarize themselves with your EdTech applications, your big ones. And I mean, obviously the UAE, even the act of allowing things like Zoom and conference calling, 4 years ago, that wasn't there. So that's really helps drive that, because all of a sudden it's opened up communication across the technology landscape.
It's been fantastic to talk to all the educators from across the Middle East region and find out their experiences from being early adopters, also all the way through to more recent events with EdTech and innovation. And me, for one, I am really excited to see where their use and our use of educational technology and innovative projects head in the near future.
Hi, Bukky. Sorry, your microphone's off a second.
Not again. Right, take two. Thank you, Olly. What was really clear from your video were the levels of diversity, innovation, and collaboration within the UAE with regards to EdTech. And not only did it impact upon teaching and learning, but other aspects with regards to reducing workload. Now, if you within the audience are actually interested in actually learning more about insights and future trends within EdTech, then check out the Future of EdTech event that's taking place for 2 days on the 4th of November and the 5th of November. This will give you a chance to hear from educators, industry experts, and thought leaders from across the globe as we actually look to the horizons and future trends. So you can actually find out more information if you follow @global_edtech on Twitter, and they'll give you updates about this event that's taking place in November.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bukky. And thank you, Olly, for your segment there as well. It was great to see so many fantastic educators from across the region there sharing their insights from over the years. I mean, I know Luke, for example, I commented on Twitter a moment ago when I heard, Luke's been out there for over a decade, I believe. Has seen some massive, he's a former colleague of yours, isn't he, Ronan? So I mean, you were out there as well. What are your perspectives, Ronan, having worked out there for some time?
Yeah, I mean, it's been well covered in that video, I think, but it is quite a dynamic place. It's a very ambitious country, and the schools that set up there reflect that. There's a real drive to innovate and try things out, and that's embedded in the culture, really.
No, absolutely. Look, we're at the end of the show. It's our first show. Please do reach out to us through social media. If you're watching on LinkedIn, please get in touch on LinkedIn. If you're on Twitter, do the same. If you're on YouTube, leave a comment there. We really, really hope you've enjoyed the format. Thanks to a few people like James Keefe who've commented during the show, saying how much they're enjoying the new format, and a few others as well. But thank you very much. Please let us know what you like, what you might like to see more of, any additional features you think would be interesting. But I think it's always important to say thank you. So I just want to do a big thank you to Al Kingsley from NetSupport, Abdul Chauhan from Shobi, Mike Tholson from Microsoft, and obviously my three counterparts here for giving their insights and thoughts in my segment. And in a world where it's important for us all to say thank you, Bukky, I'll hand over to you.
Yes, I will say thank you to Tim Evans, Gunjan Tomar, and again, Al Kingsley for sharing your insights.
Olly.
I'd like to also thank Luke Rees from Jess Arabian Ranches, Dr. Rania Sawalhi, Linda Parsons from the Alpha Tame Education Foundation, Philippa Raithmel, Neil Statham from Heartland International School, Nathan Sadler from GEMS Wellington Academy Silicon Oasis, and Ben Cooper from GEMS Wellington Academy Al Khalil.
I think you had the longest list there, didn't you? Ronan.
Yeah, just a quick shout out to eVideo, who obviously they're a company, an online video editing company that provides solutions for different sectors, including education. And we've used eVideo. They've very kindly let us use their software to create the cool videos that you've seen this evening. And you can find out more at wevideo.com.
Brilliant. Well, look, we'll be back in October, the third Thursday of the month, with more insights, news, and reviews on the EdTech Show. But for now, thank you so much for joining us for our first episode, and we hope to see you again next month. Thank you to Bukky, to Olly, to Ronan, and everyone else who's been watching and getting involved across the course of the last hour as well. Thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you on another episode of the EdTech Show next month.